Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Baron P. Cook. I'm here to talk to you about the latest episode of Star Trek Prodigy. It was called Let Sleeping Borg Lie. And as it begins, the crew is watching a holodeck replay of when the diviner told Gwen how he deliberately turned the protostar into a weapon that would hopefully destroy Starfleet. And when the engineer, Jacob, doesn't seem to understand why the diviner would do that just because Starfleet made first contact with his planet, Gwen announces to everyone that they haven't actually done that yet because her father is from the future, which I guess we knew from last season. The crew then searches for whatever part of the ship is involved with having turned it into a weapon, during which Jacob mentions transparent aluminum, which is funny, and they find a keyhole to a hidden sub-level on the ship that opens with Gwen's heirloom weapon. And then once on this sub-level, they find a weird futuristic device that is impervious to phaser fire, which is apparently the weapon. At that point, a Borg cube shows up in their path, and hologram Janeway has to explain to them what the Borg are. She wants them to run away, but they decide to board the cube because they think they might be able to find a way to disarm the weapon aboard the protostar based on what Janeway tells them about how the Borg are so adaptive. We then see the actual Janeway joylessly having a cup of tea instead of coffee on doctor's orders, and then checking in on the diviner in sickbay as he mutters something about people having taken his daughter. It turns out that the Borg on the cube have been put into a disabled state by some type of pathogen. As the crew investigates the cube, they don't find very much, but then Dahl suggests that one of them should plug into the collective in order to learn what they know. And Zero volunteers because they have previously lived in a hive mind situation, being that they're Medusan. I'm not sure how Zero would be able to connect to the Borg consciousness by hooking into that apparatus because they're a non-corporeal being, but they do, and they begin communicating with the Borg. This would seem to start a process by which the Borg are awakening, which hologram Janeway observes from the protostar, which for some reason was flown inside the cube rather than having the crew get into the cube by some other means, which seems ill-advised to me. But anyway, when the crew can't seem to get Zero out of the apparatus that is connected to them, they decide to flee and come back for them, but they are of course attacked by a bunch of Borg. And one of the Borg was like a giant rhinoceros type creature, a bipedal rhinoceros type creature, maybe a Mugatu? I don't know, I couldn't tell. Anyway, when they very quickly adapt to phaser fire, which of course presents a problem for the crew, even though Janeway should or would have told them about modulating the frequency, turns to fighting back in various other ways, but end up getting grabbed, except for Gwen, who Dahl helps escape by allowing her to drop to a lower platform within the cube after shooting a chain that was holding it in place. Zero tries to get the Borg to help them, but they proceed to assimilate them. And by them, in this case, I mean Zero. Gwen then encounters the rest of the crew as they're being assimilated, and they all encounter an assimilated Zero, whom Gwen is able to talk down when she reminds them that they're capable of acts of love, and tells them that resistance is not futile, which allows them to remember that they're part of a collective that's stronger than the Borg, stronger than they'll ever be in fact, and to break free of their control. Zero then reveals that the Borg's determination about the weapon is that it can't be modified or removed. The crew decides that they can't go to Starfleet immediately like they wanted to, because it will just attack Starfleet, the protostar will just attack Starfleet, but that they can still carry out a mission of help around the galaxy. And when they receive a distress call, they head for the coordinates that it was coming from. Meanwhile, the real Admiral Janeway comes upon the decimated relay station from last episode, and reasons that it couldn't have been Chakotay that did that. She then says that she's determined to put a stop to whoever it is that was behind it just before the diviner, who happens to be behind it, wakes up in sickbay, and that's where the episode ends. I like this episode, as I tend to like the episodes. I thought it was a little quick, like not in terms of the pacing, but before I knew it, it was over. So I was shocked by that, but I thought it was a good episode. You know, some of the elements of this show kind of streamline the stories for kids, and for that reason and in that way, the writers don't write it like they're writing for adults, so it leaves parts of it that leave you scratching your head, like why didn't she tell them about phaser modulation And, you know, why would they fly the ship into the cube, and where did the Borg suddenly come from, and stuff like that. But if you overlook that stuff, again, it was a solid episode. The characters are all great. The voice acting is great. It's really great to see that the crew really care for each other, including Gwyn cares for them and they care for Gwyn, which, you know, they have for a while now, but it's really starting to come into focus, which I think is great, because I think these characters are cool and very worthy of having friends and being cared about. And, you know, there was action. They fight the Borg. We see the Borg, which is cool in itself. And, you know, because this is yet another animation style that we've now seen them in. And the real Janeway is out there trying to find out what happened to Chakotay, and she's following closely behind the protostar, but she's always one step behind and doesn't quite know what's going on. And at the same time, she's got the diviner in her ship's sickbay, and what is he gonna tell them when they realize he's awake? And is he gonna fool them? Are they gonna know he's lying? What's he gonna try to do? Why is he still alive? So, you know, I thought it was a good episode, and it also happens to forestall their rendezvous with Starfleet, which, you know, would kind of end the show, right? They would take the ship back. So that gets forestalled, and yet we get to see the crew going around doing, you know, missions. The first season they were trying to escape from the diviner, and this season seems like it's going to be more of a thing where they're in control of the ship, they gel as a team, and all of that stuff's out of the way, and they're just going to go around having adventures. So I think the rest of the season is going to be very cool, and I look forward to each episode every Thursday, which at my house is Star Trek Day, even though there are other shows that come on Thursday. So, yeah, another good episode. I'm going to get out of here. I will, of course, be back to review the episode next week. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.